Damn Radio.
Damn Radio. And I am Sam Trapp. This is International Flavor. And we are, of course, on Damn Radio. I'm very glad to have you. I'm very glad that you are here. If you wish to call in, you may do so at 573-746-8020. Lots of news occurred over the weekend. It was definitely not, excuse me, a boring weekend in the news sphere. So Friday was Victory Day in Russia, and that's one of the biggest holidays all the time. A lot of last week was spent on my show talking about Victory Day and Zelensky's threats, basically, against world leaders that were planning to go, basically saying we can't guarantee your safety. Kind of a veiled threat that he was going to do something, and it never did. It never happened. Now, over the weekend, I had an opportunity to watch the entire parade, to listen to Vladimir Putin's entire speech, and I got to tell you, it was definitely impressive what they were doing. There were 10,000 soldiers that marched from 13 different countries that marched. And Victory Day is a large holiday. And fortunately, nothing happened badly. And as you know or may not know, Putin issued an order that there would be a 3-day ceasefire unilaterally from his side. He encouraged Kiev to take the same steps, and Kiev never committed to it, and in fact laughed it off, made jokes about it, said, what use do we have for a 3-day ceasefire? We want a 30-day ceasefire. It's funny that they don't talk about a forever ceasefire, not a word about that. You only get these, and they don't follow the ceasefire anyway. At any rate, right after that, immediately after Victory Day, the very next day, there was a train. So Macron, Kaja Kallas, Merz, the new leader of France, Germany, and Keir Starmer, the new genius from Great Britain, all got on a train and went to Kiev. Okay, they all met with Zelensky in a very staged, very public solidarity move, allegedly. Remember all of their coalition of the willing nonsense, and they want to provide money. Kaja Kallas brought $1 billion to give to Ukraine. Allegedly, Trump is or has already approved the transfer of all kinds of American missiles from Germany to Ukraine. Now, I'm, as you know, I am against this. This is now officially Trump's war. This is no longer Joe Biden's war, and you can't say anything different because Trump had the ability to stop it, and he hasn't. And instead, he's done an about face. He is now right in the arms, in the grasp of your Lindsey Graham types who never met a war they couldn't get behind, that they didn't love. Lindsey Graham is a warmongering a-hole. Now, I always felt the same, basically the same, and I've been pretty open about it, that I felt basically the same about Marco Rubio. I certainly feel the same about that former General Kellogg. That guy is definitely living in the 80s. Do you remember when Barack Obama said to Mitt Romney in a debate way back when, what was it, 2008? He had during the debate, old Romney was saying something about Russia being a threat, and Obama says to him, the 80s are calling and they want their foreign policy back. Well, apparently he didn't believe that. Nobody else did, because they've been spending their entire careers creating an enemy that doesn't exist out of Russia, instead of attempting to work together and create something different. You want a new world order? How about creating something between China, Russia, and the United States? How about that? That could be interesting. Whether or not that was a reality, it's not, but it would be certainly worth the effort to do. So basically, these four clowns, four clowns plus they met with Zelensky, so it's a 5-clown show. And there they are in Kiev creating ultimatums for Putin. The reason they got to do this ultimatum is because Trump outlined that he is behind them. Okay, so Trump is now right back in, pulling a Biden and right back in to this warmongering. Let's provide some more weapons. Let's provide some missiles that can continue to strike deep into Russia and then force an ultimatum. But I think the boy got outplayed, and here's why. He made a call. Well, this clown show made a call to him after they had come up with this 22 points of order that they are going to demand that Putin sign, at the risk of, if he doesn't do what they say, do this new Kellogg plan. And the Kellogg plan's a joke too, to take the Kellogg plan and make it a reality, some sort of demilitarized zone and blah, blah, blah. And that this demilitarized zone, the Kellogg plan, is now officially going to be demanded. And as soon as Trump said that he was behind this effort, then these people all came out and talked about how wonderful this was and how Trump's behind us. And Zelensky even got involved in the clown show. Well, Zelensky's always in the clown show, but he added his 2 cents worth in, basically telling Putin what he was going to do come tomorrow morning. Now, right now, it is tomorrow morning in Moscow. And I'll bet you just about anything that the offensive is not there. Russia has been against it, and I hate to repeat it, but I'm going to, that Russia has been against this sort of ceasefire for 30 days because of several reasons, but the main one being the only reason to desire a 30-day ceasefire complete and against all targets, if you are Ukraine, is because you want to regroup, you want to restructure, you want to rearm, resupply, get time for more weapons to be delivered, get time for the Patriot missiles that Trump has allegedly approved to come in from Germany. Get them there. It's like 110 of them. These Patriots, which are allegedly going to save them. They won't. They'll get blown up too. There's some interesting news on that end as well. And the Russians have said forever that we aren't going to go for this because of the fact that all you'll do is use it to regroup, rebuild, resupply, and hopefully remobilize people. Okay. And we're not going to allow that because we are winning. And since when does the losing side get to dictate to the winning side that they will accept a ceasefire, basically surrender? Capitulation is demanded of you tomorrow because Donald Trump said so, and everybody knows that Donald Trump gets what he wants. Well, Donald Trump got on Truth Social and said, yeah. But then, a day later, late last night, in Moscow, which was late yesterday afternoon for us, Putin gave his response. He called a press conference. didn't take any questions, but he read off a statement. I have that statement transferred in English, and we'll get to that. It's about 15 minutes long, and I'm gonna read it to you in its entirety so you hear exactly what Putin said. You judge for yourselves. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying. I don't care if you do or don't. I know what's right anyway. And if you wish to convince me, please provide some alternative facts, and I'll be happy to consider them. But our foreign policy is BS and has been for many years, especially with regards to the events and targeting of Russia in the way they were doing. And Russia isn't afraid of more sanctions, friends and neighbors. You know, England's already said, we're going to sanction another 100 ships, and we're not going to allow any ships to get by. Russia's already indicated they don't give a rip. They're even going to sanction Nord Stream 2. The British are. They're going to sanction Nord Stream 2, which is basically destroyed. But there's talk that Putin and Trump are starting to try to work something out with Witkoff on that end. But who knows about the truth of that stuff? None of us are there in that room. But I think it's important to listen to specifically what Putin said. But before that, I was trying to find the summary of the ceasefire demands and what they were exactly wanting to require, because those details have been not necessarily forthcoming. And those, they say, are very similar to what Kellogg proposed, right? And to what Kellogg's little peace plan is. And his peace plan is just BS. You know, create a demilitarized zone and that's it. That's all you got. It's very short and it doesn't give enough of the information, but basically it's saying a complete unconditional cessation of hostilities for 30 days covering air, sea, and land, starting Monday, May 12th. Consequences for non-compliance if Russia doesn't comply. Western leaders, including Zelensky, warn of massive sanctions targeting Russia's energy and banking sectors if Russia refused to implement the ceasefire. The purpose is to create a window for confidence-building measures and pave the way for detailed peace talks to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which was begun by Russia in 2022. No, that's a lie, but this is the lies that they're pushing out. They can't speak the truth ever. They just can't do it. And the details of the ultimatum were reported by Newsweek in UK on May 10th. Zelensky says, we agree that a full and unconditional ceasefire, so him and his, this is the same thing that Zelensky's been doing forever. 2 years ago, he had his little plan. He wanted to get together in Switzerland and tell everybody, here's what we need. We're Ukraine and we demand this. And people are like, you can't, what are you going to just give him an ultimatum? You can't do that. That's not negotiation. And here we are again in the exact same spot. And before it was Biden and everybody knew that Biden was behind it. But now it's Trump doing the exact same thing. It's nonsense. And Zelensky says, we agree that a full and unconditional ceasefire must begin on Monday for at least 30 days. We jointly demand this from Russia, and we know we are supported in this by the United States. French President Macron, speaking in Poland on May 11, he called Putin's refusal to agree to the ceasefire and his insistence on prior talks another example of delaying tactics. He reiterated that Russia faces massive sanctions if he doesn't comply. And here's the foreign minister of Ukraine, Andriy Sybiha. Allies are ready for a complete unconditional ceasefire on land, in the air, and sea for 30 days, starting as early as Monday. Okay? Now, I could read to you what everybody says Putin said, and I listened to his press conference last night, but I found a good source for the full speech. And basically, here is his reply. So President Putin has proposed starting peace talks with Ukraine without any preconditions as soon as Thursday. This is where Trump got upstaged, okay? Because Trump, immediately after these 5 clowns get their clown show finished up and they send this thing saying, we demand Russia agree to a 30-day ceasefire tomorrow with no preconditions. Trump gets on his Truth Social and goes, yeah, what he said. And he says, here's what we're going to do. Well, everybody knows, including Trump, because he sent a team over and Russia said, no, we're not going to agree to that because, number one, we're winning. Number two, you have all of these, you're going to do to us what you always do. You're going to be Lucy pulling the football out from under Charlie Brown, and we are no longer going to be your Charlie Brown. Basically, that's what they have said with one voice for many, many months, certainly since Trump took office. And Trump was trying to get to know the other side. Remember all this talk of, we know why, and we know what they're talking about now. We've learned a lot from, remember Rubio coming back from Riyadh and saying all these things and being very positive about what was going to be accomplished, and that we understand that there are good reasons for what they are proposing, and we finally get their side of the story and all of that. Do you remember that? Well, that is certainly not what they are saying now. That's not the case. Now they've done a 180. They've joined the Kellogg plan and taken Witkoff's good negotiation skills and, for lack of a better word, shit canned him. He's done. It's clear that Trump is now with the neocons, and Trump, it's officially his war friends and neighbors. At any rate, here we go. Putin offered to start unconditional talks with Ukraine without delay on May 15 in Istanbul. And here is his entire speech. And sorry to read it to you, but I didn't want to play it in Russian and have you hear it in the background and me read it off a screen. I'll just read to you the full text that I have here. Good evening, or maybe good night already, because it was late. I want to greet everyone, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Allow me once again to congratulate all of you on the great Victory Day. Thanks to our friends and foreign partners who have been with us in Moscow these days at the anniversary celebrations to bow to the generation of winners. We honor all those who contributed to the common victory over Nazism, including our allies in the anti-Hitler coalition, Chinese soldiers, participants in the anti-fascist resistance in Europe, fighters of the People's Liberation Movements in Africa, the Asia-Pacific region, and volunteers from Latin American countries. Together with our friends and like-minded people, we share a common memory and respect for history. Heroic deed of true heroes who fought for freedom, and of course, our responsibility for the future, for building a more just and safe world. The issues that directly affect the stable, sustainable development of the entire world, Eurasia and other world regions as well, were at the center of a bilateral and multilateral meetings held in Russia, in Moscow. Of course, they were held in a special, solemn, festive atmosphere, but at the same time, they were extremely rich and informative, filled with topics of the political, economic, and humanitarian agenda. Summing up, this is exactly what I would like to do now. I would say that in 4 days, from May 7 to May 10, we hosted official visits by the leaders of 3 foreign states, the People's Republic of China, the Venezuelan and Bolivian Republic, and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Additionally, 20 bilateral meetings were held with the heads of the CIS countries, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and Latin America. In total, 20 heads of state from the CIS, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Latin America, and 10 heads of international organizations took place in the celebrations. Another 6 countries were represented at a high level. We see inspiring evidence of genuine consolidation around the enduring ideas and values of our common great victory in a widespread participation of delegations from foreign countries and international organizations. We are grateful to the leaders of the 13 states who sent units of their national armed forces to participate in the parade on Red Square. Their shoulder-to-shoulder march with our ceremonial units filled the common holiday with special energy and the spirit of military brotherhood, tempered during the Second World War. I was pleased to personally thank the military leaders of the Korean People's Army and convey my warmest words to soldiers and commanders of Special Forces units of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, who jointly with our servicemen professionally, and I want to emphasize this, faithfully perform their assignments during the liberation of the Kursk region border areas from the Kiev regime forces. I would like to emphasize they showed courage and heroism, acted, I want to say this again, professionally to the highest degree, showed good training and preparation. And of course, it was a special honor for all state leaders to salute the main heroes of the victory anniversary on the stands, World War II veterans. Sorry about that. I'm from Russia, Israel, Armenia, and Mongolia. That actually was kind of impressive. There's some old people, to be truthful. And I tell you what, I do want to get to and talk about a couple, sorry to interrupt right in between there, but I wanted to remind myself, 105-year-old, and then another lady that went to lay flowers in Ukraine on the graves of their forefathers who died in the war. And I'll tell you the story about that. I don't want to miss out on that because it's important. Anyway, I would like to highlight that despite threats, blackmail, and obstacles caused, including the closure of airspace, the leaders of several European countries, Serbia, Slovakia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, came to Moscow. I would like to reiterate, we understand the massive pressure they faced, and therefore we sincerely appreciate their political courage, firm moral position, and their decision to share the holiday with us, to pay tribute to the memory of the heroes of the Great Patriotic War, World War II, who fought for their fatherland and for deliverance from the brown plague of the whole world, of the entire mankind, without any exaggeration. That's a bad translation. He didn't say brown plague. He said gryazny plague, which means dirty, a dirty plague, not brown. It is important for us that millions of Europeans, state leaders that pursue sovereign policies, remember this. This gives us optimism and hope that sooner or later, based on the lessons of history and the opinion of our peoples, we will begin to move toward restoring constructive relations with European states, including those who today still do not give up their anti-Russian rhetoric and clearly aggressive actions against us. They are still trying. We can see it correctly these days, to talk to us, in fact, in a boorish manner and only through ultimatums. He's getting ready to tell you why why he isn't going to accept this. And I apologize again. I'm reading Vladimir Putin's full speech, and it's enlightening. And I wanted to make sure that you listen to it. When you hear how this guy speaks and how he addresses it, it's very well put. And if you can't call him a kindred spirit to Trump, then you got problems, because that's the way he should be seen. Our comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction with the People's Republic of China can serve as a genuine example of modern equal relations in the 21st century. Chinese President Xi Jinping was the chief guest at the celebrations marking the 80th anniversary of this great victory. We have had exceptionally fruitful negotiations. We have adopted 2 joint statements at the level of heads of state. We have signed a number of intergovernmental and interdepartmental agreements covering such areas as energy, trade, finance, science, culture, and much more. That's true. You ought to see them all. As I've already said, it has been agreed that in September I will pay an official return visit to China. This is becoming an annual deal for them to each go visit each other for several days for the celebrations marking the 80th anniversary victory in China over militaristic Japan. Remember, the Chinese were fighting against Japan at the same time. That's why it was a world war. We only think about the Europe side, but the Asia side was just as big a horror story, and Japan was the aggressor there. It is deeply symbolic and natural that the principal, in fact, the main commemorative events related to the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe and Asia will be held in Moscow and Beijing, in the capital cities of the states whose peoples passed through the hardest trials and paid the highest price for the common victory. That's absolutely true. Russia, 27 million. China, a similar amount. Some people say as high as 35 million. Colleagues, I think it obvious to everyone that the talks and meetings held in Moscow also touched on the issue of resolving the conflict in Ukraine. We are grateful to all of our guests, our friends, for the attention they are paying to this conflict and to the efforts they are making to bring this conflict to an end. In this connection, I believe it is necessary to address this topic separately. So I want to say that, as it is known, Russia has proposed ceasefire initiatives on several occasions. Okay, and that is absolutely true. And I want you to pay special attention to this because we ignore it here. Nobody talks about this. But the initiatives, have been repeatedly sabotaged by Ukraine. All totally true. For example, the Kiev regime defiantly violated about 130 times the 30-day, and I want to make it a point, the 30-day moratorium from March 18 to April 17 on strikes against Russian energy facilities, which was declared in accordance with our mutual agreement with U.S. President Donald Trump. Then there was an Easter truce initiated by Russia that was not observed either. Russia unilaterally declared a ceasefire and did not fire on Ukraine for the Easter holiday. The ceasefire regime was violated by Ukrainian forces more than 5,000 times. Nevertheless, for the Victory Day, and we consider Victory Day to be a sacred holiday as well, just imagine, we lost more than 27 million people. We declared a ceasefire for the third time on this holiday, which is sacred to us. Incidentally, we conveyed to those of our colleagues in the West who, in my opinion, are sincerely looking for ways to settle our position on this issue, on a ceasefire on Victory Day, and that in the future we do not exclude the possibility of extending the terms of the truce. But of course, after analyzing what will happen in these several days, based on the results of how the Kiev regime will react to our ceasefire proposal over Victory Day. And what did we see? What are the results? The Kiev authorities, as you can see for yourself, did not respond at all to our ceasefire proposal. Moreover, after the announcement of our proposal, and this happened, you remember, on May the 5th, the Kiev authorities launched large-scale attacks in the early hours of May 7. As many as 524 unmanned aerial vehicles and a number of Western-made missiles participated in the strike, and 45 unmanned boats were used simultaneously in the Black Sea. Actually, during the 3 days of the ceasefire that we announced, May 8, 9, and 10, it happened that you also saw from the media, in fact, from your own reports, it was clear. During this time, 5 targeted attempts were made to attack the state border of the Russian Federation in the area of the Kursk region and at the junction with the Belgorod region, precisely during the days of the ceasefire we announced. Additionally, another 36 attacks were made in other areas. All of these attacks, including attempts to enter the territory of the Russian Federation in the Kursk region and the Belgorod region, were repelled. Moreover, our military experts believe that they had no military significance and were conducted solely for political reasons, and that the enemy suffered very heavy losses. Now that's saying a lot, people. 3 times Russia has offered ceasefires, and every single time, Kiev has violated them, and they haven't followed them at all. I've been reporting on it ever since the first one was initiated on March 18. But here's Putin outlining this to the world, and he's doing it so hopefully the world will listen. You are part of the world, and so therefore you need to listen, and you should get it straight from him. Sometimes it's difficult to get this type of news, especially in America, because nobody puts it out. They don't want to tell you. This is twisted to the other way, and our government is now on the wrong side. I was pretty pleased with what was going on a month ago, as I said, but now they're on the wrong side. Now we're back to Putin here. As I've already said, the Kiev authorities not only declined our ceasefire proposal, but also, as we all saw, tried to intimidate the leaders of the heads of state who gathered for the celebrations in Moscow. You know, when I met with colleagues here in Moscow, a thought occurred to me. I will share it with you. Who are they trying to intimidate among those who came to Moscow to celebrate the victory over Nazi Germany? Who were they trying to frighten? Those who have come to us are leaders not by position or a post. They are leaders by character, by their beliefs and the willingness to stand for those beliefs. And who was trying to intimidate them? Those who stand at attention and salute and applaud former SS soldiers and elevate those who collaborated with Hitler. He's talking about Stefan Bandera during World War II to the rank of national heroes. It seems to me that this is an attempt with obviously unsuitable means, and those who are trying to do this do not correspond to the scale they expect themselves. I will repeat, we have proposed steps toward a ceasefire on many occasions. We have never refused to engage in dialogue with the Ukrainian side. Let me remind you again, and this is important too, it was not us who interrupted the negotiations in 2022. It was the Ukrainian side. In this connection, despite everything, we still propose that the authorities in Kiev should resume the negotiations that they themselves interrupted at the end of the 2022 direct peace talks. And I stress, without any preconditions. So he's saying he's ready to talk with no preconditions. We suggest starting without delay next Thursday, May 15th, in Istanbul, where they were held earlier and where they were interrupted. As you know, our Turkish colleagues have repeatedly offered their services to organize such talks, and President Erdogan has done a lot to organize them. I recall that as a result of these talks, a joint draft document was prepared and initialed by the head of the Kiev negotiating group, but at the insistence of the West, and I add this, Boris Johnson, it was simply thrown into the wastebasket. Tomorrow, we are going to have a conversation with the President of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan. I would like to ask him to provide such an opportunity to hold talks in Turkey. I hope that he will confirm his desire to contribute to the search for peace in Ukraine. We are set on serious negotiations with Ukraine. Their aim should be to eliminate the root cause of the conflict and to achieve a long-term and lasting peace from a historical perspective. We do not rule out that in the course of these negotiations it will become possible to agree on some kind of new truce and a new ceasefire, and a real ceasefire that would be observed not only by Russia, but also by the Ukrainian side, would be a good first step. I repeat, towards a long-term, sustainable peace rather than a prelude to continuing armed conflict after the Ukrainian armed forces have been rearmed, re-equipped, and frantically dug new trenches and new strongholds. Who needs such a peace? Here he's saying, we're winning. Why in the world would we agree to a ceasefire so they can regroup and protect Dnipropetrovsk? Our proposal is, as they say, on the table. The decision is now up to Ukrainian authorities and their supervisors. He didn't call them supervisors. What did he call them? Their handlers. Their handlers, who are. The decision is now up to Ukrainian authorities and their handlers, who are seemingly guided by their personal political ambition rather than the interest of their own peoples. They want to continue the war against Russia at the hands of the Ukrainian nationalists. He's seriously talking about Lindsey Graham and his ilk. That's what he's doing. Lindsey Graham, like I said, never met a war he couldn't get behind. Let me reiterate, Russia is ready for talks without any preliminary conditions. There are combat actions and war going on now, and we propose to resume the negotiations that were not interrupted by us. Remember, there was still war going on at that time when they were talking in Istanbul before. What difference does it make if the war is going on? I think it would give them more of a sense of urgency to resolve it if the war was still going on. And it would make people think more of, especially the Ukrainian side, who thinks, well, we have America on our side. That's clearly what happened this weekend with these clowns out there going, yeah, we got our big brother ready over there to kick the crap out of you, but Trump ain't ready to kick the crap out of him. All we're ready to do is throw more sanctions because Lindsey Graham's an idiot. And Lindsey Graham loves his war. Well, Trump does too, apparently, because he's the one that's jumped on board with this and isn't listening to those who know. These people don't know. They just love war. It's nonsense. La 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 la. They want to blah blah blah. Russia is ready to talk without any precondition. What is wrong with talking? Those who really want peace cannot help but support this. At the same time, I would like to express my gratitude once again for the mediation services and efforts aimed at peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian crisis undertaken by our foreign partners, including China, Brazil, African countries, the Middle East, and recently the new administration of the United States of America. In conclusion, I would like to once again thank everyone who shared with us the festive celebrations dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory over Nazism. I am sure that the spirit of solidarity and harmony that united us in Moscow these past days will continue to help us build fruitful cooperation and partnership in the name of progress, security, and peace. I would also like to take this opportunity to note the tremendous role of journalists, representatives of international information agencies, TV channels, and the press who covered the anniversary events and the many-hour program of current negotiations and working meetings. Much has been done to ensure that people in different countries around the world experienced the unique atmosphere of the holidays in Moscow. Of course, I thank you for this meeting as well, and it is held quite late, and of course, everyone is tired. Thank you very much for your attention. It is almost 1:30 in the morning, and even later than 1:30 in Moscow. God be with you all. Thank you very much for your attention. Good night. And that, my friends, was the entire speech of Vladimir Putin. And I think sometimes you need to hear it from the horse's mouth. And this was one of those times, because over here, all we are doing in America is stressing that Putin's a bad guy, that Putin wants war, and nobody ever listens. And there's so many people that put it out there that Putin, all he wants is, he wants to take over Europe. He wants to rule the world. Remember Pinky and the Brain? What are we going to do today, Brain? Same thing we do every day, Pinky. Plot to take over the world. I used to love Pinky and the Brain. But everybody thinks that Vladimir Putin is the evil brain. And apparently Zelensky is Pinky. Zelensky is Pinky. Isn't that terrible? He'd make a good Pinky. Come on, Brain. I love it. At any rate, I'm glad I shared that with you, and I realize that I have sometimes a one-track mind when it comes to this conflict, but I have watched these mistakes over and over and over, and the really sad part is I'm not the strategic god of the planet, and I like to think that perhaps the people who are making these decisions wrongly have far more information than I have. But I don't think that's true. I think that the neocon group, all they want to do is tell people what they want to hear. And it's a never-ending cycle. The military-industrial complex folks claim to have all the knowledge, and they pass it along with packets of money to your Lindsey Graham types who circle it back through and say, oh yeah, we believe them. And then they create it and pass it on to the generals who get more money, and they're wined and dined into buying more weapons, and that goes on in a circle. I saw a very interesting article this weekend that says that Russia's military-industrial complex is ramped up so high right now that they are providing somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 new Shahed-type drones. These are the big ones. A day. That's 150,000 a month. And they have the potential, and that's just the Shaheeds. They're doing the other types as well. They're, according to military, what is the name of that? It's a British actually, military analysis firm. says that this year, just this year, Russia's new tank model, the model number I forget, but it's a hell of a badass tank. That tank, they are going to produce and release 1,500 this year. The U.S. to ramp up to replace those that Ukraine has already taken, at most, the most they have ever produced is 150 in a year. There ain't no way they're keeping up. Russia is, U.S. and Russia are pretty much equivalent. I can't remember the exact numbers, and I saw them as late as about a month ago. That how much they were putting. Russia's is somewhere in the neighborhood of 13%, I want to say, and the U.S.'s is somewhere also in that range. That 13% of our GDP is going to, and our 13% is enormous. It's our 13% is astronomical money compared to what the Russians are doing. And what are we getting? 150 tanks a year? Missiles? So our only option is nuclear war? That's it? That's what we get? Oh, all the money's going to put a new aircraft carrier somewhere. Aircraft carriers are, I don't want to say they're obsolete, but they're taking a beating from the Houthis, aren't they? They're not doing well. We've had 3 Hornets drop in the water, 60 million a pop in the last month. 60 million a pop. They're falling off the ship. This 3 times they fell off. Ukraine lost another one today. Another Western, can't remember if it was an F-16, which one it was. Sorry, I had to take a little sip there. I was getting a little dry. So at any rate, it's just amazing. So, and then the news regarding this, it's pretty funny because I like to go out and hunt down the news, and I'm playing around with AI myself. I'm using, and I paid for a month of Grok to see if it gives me anything more. Actually, don't do it. I haven't noticed anything different. And what it says, it grants you bigger files, it does not. There's not a damn thing different than there was before. What am I, in a priority queue to go ahead of people who haven't paid? I notice zero difference in that. Don't pay until they outline what it really is. I think I just wasted my $29 this month, and who hates pissing away $29. It's kind of rude to say it that way, but there you have it. Once again, if you'd like to call, it's 573-746-8020. My brother has confirmed, Matthew Von Trapp, that he will be here on Thursday evening to continue our tales of what do you call it? Deep state and conspiracy theories. Also, over the weekend, I did 2 Russian shows, hour and a half apiece, which are out there on my Russian-speaking channel on YouTube. I only bring that up because I also have an English-speaking channel on YouTube, and that channel I also did a video show yesterday. And it is out there for you to see. And that one has to do with corruption as well. On the legal end, I am putting together something to submit to a law review journal regarding this sort of thing. I'm going to try to do some more. I've been encouraged by listening to damn radio over the last few weeks with people like Ike. The Shield Maidens of Missouri really get me all worked up listening to them. I think they're very, very well spoken and just know stuff. And they know more than I do, and I like that. I like to learn. I like to know new things, and I believe that listening to them gives me somewhat of a little bit more information. And one of the things, hang on a second, I believe we have us a caller. Let's see what we got here. Hello, caller. You are on the air.
Am I really?
You absolutely are.
Well, this is your brother, Clayton.
Oh, well, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I've been listening to your podcast, your broadcast, and um, I looked up while you were talking. I've been trying to get Putin's American version
Phone number?
of his speech. Huh?
You
Yeah,
wanted
his
his
phone
phone
number.
number? I've got it.
Yeah. No,
Well, I just
wanted to
read I
know.
just read his entire speech to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know, but I wanted to get a copy myself. Where was
Well,
that speech given?
late last night. It was a late last night speech, and I found it. So, if you want to be a what do they call us these days? If you want to be a Putin puppet or a useful idiot for Putin, as Hillary Clinton liked to call Donald Trump, if you wish to
Yeah,
be a
no.
useful idiot like me and spout off propaganda for the Russian side, you can usually find it at RT, which means Russia Today.
Rush.
It's
Yeah.
an RT is where they published it today. It's called. It's an 11 May. Uh, it's on their
Okay.
website rt.com/Russia, and then it's near the top says Putin's unconditional peace talks with Ukraine. This is the full speech,
Oh,
of it all. And
that's
how are
good.
things
So
out there?
here's
And where are you these days? You in Reno?
yeah, I'm at my Tahoe location. So but so on a serious note, Sam, I want to know you're very well read. You understand the Russian language. You can communicate effectively. My Russian is очень плохо, right? So
Duh.
so I want to be informed. That's my goal in life, is just to be informed. And so the article that I found that seemed to be the most comprehensive, believe it or not, came from the Al Jazeera publication, and I understand they're probably pro Russia. I want a
No. Al
uh,
Jazeera is definitely not pro-Russia. No.
well,
Matthew.
the
Well, the
article
article
seemed to
might
think
be
so.
pro-Russia, but I want to tell you a little bit about Al Jazeera and my thoughts on that. Now, um, when I lived in Qatar with Matthew is when he introduced me to Al Jazeera. And you hear a name like that, in America, and you go, oh, geez, these Arabs are taking over the planet. Everything Arab you suddenly equate to Osama bin Laden's going to kill us all, that kind of thing. And it's just wrong, first of all. They have very professional journalists on that staff. They have their own opinions, and their opinions vary, but you're far more likely to get the full news content without it being twisted horribly to one side.
Yeah,
Now,
and that's
they
what I'm
might
looking for. That's all I
they
want.
might lean toward one side, but I remember watching the news when I was a kid and thinking that they were spending times providing us fact. Okay. And I don't feel that way now at all. Everything is just a political stunt. You know what I mean? And everything is so twisted in America that you never get a good story. So Al Jazeera is one. There's a place. There's an Indian lady that I watch on. Let's see if I can give it to you. That because she's good to watch, and she'll be here in my history somewhere. Let me see what I can find. Sharmi. I wish I could remember her name. But I'll see if she comes up in my space here anytime soon. I'm just scrolling backward to get it, and so far nothing. But uh, I thought I watched some not too long ago because of the war that occurred in, between Pakistan and India, which is, ongoing at present. And That's not good. And what is her name? No, I got nothing. I'll see if I can find a link for it and send it to you so that you can get to it. But no, I don't have anything in my recent history enough to provide to you. Did I lose you? Are you still there? Oh, I think I lost him after all that. I'm very sorry. I've been babbling to myself. Well, call back if you are still listening to the program, and perhaps we can finalize that conversation because I have lost you. But thanks for calling. And again, thanks for listening. I know you're my brother, but I enjoy the fact that you are listening. And I encourage you to encourage all. Man, if just the family listened, there'd be 1 million listeners a day. we'd have a lot of people paying attention then. So sorry to be drinking my late night tea there on the air. So we did read that. I wanted to go into a little bit more about the fact part of what went on with this story between Putin and Zelensky. Now remember that Zelensky has outlawed talks with Russia. He has forbidden anyone to speak with anyone after Boris Johnson said no more talking. Oh, maybe we shall get him back. Here comes the call. Hello, sir. Are you with me?
I am. I think I got cut off.
Well, something happened. You just suddenly disappeared. And I was sitting there going, well, those who aren't with us are against us.
Well, listen, I appreciate your knowledge because I actually wanted to look a little bit more. And as far as your lady Sharmisa or whatever, just send that in the group chat that we have established, and I'll look at that for sure. But let me ask you a question, and I know you've got a certain opinion about this. Here's from my military training was on the medical side. Yours was more on the negotiating and interrogation side. But the thing that I understand, and you might be able to refute this, you might be able to confirm it, is that it seems to me that when Putin invaded the Crimea during Obama, and when he invaded during the Biden administration into, deep into Ukraine territory, he was the aggressor. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
That is a very skewed statement. And I don't blame you, because that's the only thing they pass out over here. But people who follow this and are in the know that in Crimea, and in specific, there was a reason for that. And it started out with Ukraine refusing to allow native Russians to speak their own language. They were giving away the port of Sevastopol to the West, and many other things that were going on in Crimea. Plus, Crimea is at least 80% Russian-speaking, Russian ethnic heritage, and Sevastopol has been a Russian seaport for 400-500 years. It's been a seaport of Russia, and there ain't no way Russia was going to walk away from that. And Crimea did its own referendum and chose to go with Russia and Ukraine. And Russia didn't want that, by the way. All they wanted was the same thing they wanted with the Donbass regions of Donetsk and Lugansk. They said, listen, you make these autonomous republics and we won't fold them into Russia. They just need to be autonomous. They can still be Ukrainian regions, but they get to make their own decisions. And Ukraine refused. They started killing off people. That's when the Maidan coups took place, or the Maidan massacres took place, and that anniversary was only a few weeks ago, where they killed them all. They killed a good number of people that were protesting for Russia in the streets, and the CIA was deeply involved in that. And they want to call that the invasion of the Crimea. But that was clearly a referendum. Now, nobody advertised that. And here in America, you didn't even hear about it until years later. And then everybody condemned Russia for it. The same thing occurred since 2014. During the Minsk Accords, there's these two agreements that the Russians signed, which were backed by, and they weren't signed by Zelensky, they were signed by his predecessors, but they were backed by Germany and France that said we will do it. But that was because they were afraid of Russia coming in, because the two regions we're talking about of Donetsk and Lugansk, those two had declared their own independence. They were, again, 80% Russian at least, and they wanted to be part of Russia. And Russia said no. They said, you can be independent, and if we sign these Minsk Accords, there will be a common defense of both. Well, there's been all kinds of paperwork that came and stories that came up afterward, and admissions by both Germany and France that the only reason they signed Minsk I and Minsk II was to give Ukraine enough time for the U.S. side to build them up. They've increased their army in Ukraine over the last 10 years from 200,000 soldiers or military members to 1 million, clearly in an effort to be ready to go after Russia. And so there were provocations all along. And when you say the word invasion, everybody likes to use that word invasion. And like true democracy, they never... I lost you, didn't I? You're gone again.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I didn't know. But like a true democracy, or in Democrat land, they make sure that every time you say something, you got to say it with your advertising. So your advertising is, we want people to use the word invasion. We want to say invade, 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 because there's a bad connotation. But if they were invited by a referendum, which really did occur, it's not an invasion, is it? We did the same thing in Serbia. We did the same thing in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We divided up Czechoslovakia into how many different parts, and all we do it all the time. But as the West, we can go, oh, geez, no, those referendums aren't any good. Those aren't counted properly. Those are skewed. The Russians made that up, right? And so that's what happened. You can believe it or not believe it. That's up to you, of course. And there's plenty of sources where you can find more information about it. But sometimes when you listen to people like me, you get the feeling that we're anti-Ukrainian. I'm not. But I'm certainly not anti-Russian, nor should any of us be. There is no reason for us to be involved or for Russia to be the enemy of America or any of us. And sadly, I feel like I've said several times, this is no longer the Biden war. It is now the Trumpsters. He has... Yep, it's his.
He did what?
It's now his war. He bought it.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I can't get there from what I know. However, I want to get more information from you. The Minsk agreements, that was back in the 90s, right? That was after Russia, from the famous Reagan line, Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall, and Ukraine became its own country, independent of the Soviet Union, as did all the other Soviet states. And refresh my memory.
I was in like 92, but Minsk I was signed on September 5th, 2014. And then the Ukrainian side ignored it completely, and Minsk II was signed on February 12 of 2015. Because remember, after Crimea, these other territories were going, well, we want to be part of Russia too. The Ukrainians are killing us. And it was true. They were.
So help me figure out, going back a little bit further, from my memory, Sam, and you would know this because you were still in the military at that time, if I'm not mistaken, doing some of that work that was over there and negotiating, etc. But when Ukraine was independent again, in order for them to be part of the agreement, they had to forfeit all of their nuclear arsenal, right? They had to.
Now that started, and I forget what that one is called. I think that's called the Budapest Accords, and the Budapest Accords required Ukraine, which was basically the second largest after Russia, America too, but the second largest holder of nuclear weapons after the fall of the Soviet Union. And so it also required and Ukraine fights about this all the time, but I've read the Budapest agreements or accords. I've read them, and they don't say what they like to say. They say that they get security guarantees from America. Doesn't say that. It says... Go ahead. You know your phone's cutting out a little bit. You might.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm on a Wi-Fi system here, so.
Well, it's clear right now, but basically, they like to say that it required America to provide for the defense of Ukraine in the event that Russia invaded or attacked them. Now, that's not what the agreement says. It says the parties will provide security, and then it outlines the how and when and under what circumstances. But it doesn't include the circumstances of a referendum by Crimea or by any of the places like Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Lugansk, who have all had referenda. It doesn't include that situation, and so even if it did apply, it wouldn't if it was a referendum of that nature. And so Budapest does not apply. Minsk I and Minsk II, there's plenty of news out there from plenty of sources, even in the West, that say these were the Germans and the French admitted that they only signed on to this guarantee to give Ukraine enough time to go from 200,000 military to 1 million. And, their 1 million man military is pretty decimated these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I understand. And so I'm curious as to why you would call this Trump's war, or Trump's vested in this. He has always stated that he's against war, and he has actually encouraged Zelensky to accept a deal, of course, of the recently announced mineral deal that they have with Ukraine. And so I'm wondering exactly how Trump might be part of this war effort.
Well, in the beginning of his second term here as president number 47, he said, "We want this war done. This is not my war. This is not my war. This is Biden's war. Never should have started. If I was president, it never would have happened. I can resolve it in 1 day." Then it came, "I can resolve it in 100 days. I can get rid of it." Well, now 100 days is gone, and he hasn't produced. Okay. He hired the right team to go over, and he was doing what many in my line of work, and you can find them. Listen to Jeffrey Sachs, if you're a professor. If you want a real genius, listen to that guy. And that guy knows stuff, and you can find a lot of his stuff. He gave a speech in front of the EC about a month and a half ago that was interstellar. It was very, very good, and he laid it out for everyone why this is BS. And he's been doing nothing but this for 30 years against all of the warmongers like Lindsey Graham and those others like that, and all of the presidents, including Trump 45, because Trump 45 was very much into supplying Ukraine with weapons at that time. But when he came into office, he had the opportunity and he had the power to attempt to have a normalized relationship with Russia, and he was well on that path. And for 3 days, he denied money and equipment to Ukraine and told Zelensky, you're gonna do something here. And then 3 days later, he gave it back to them. And since that time, and that only occurred a month ago, less, since that time, he switched from listening to the people who know what's going on, including people at the time like J.D. Vance, and he was not listening to the neocon, nonsensical 1980s foreign policy people who you got to hate the Soviet Union. Soviet Union's still around in the form of Vladimir Putin. He is a spy in Germany, you know. One of those people. And those people are need an enemy. And so they've created the enemy. And this enemy, unfortunately, and the enemy for us is these people like Lindsey Graham, that this is eternal war that will never end if you keep people like him around, right? It's nothing but military and money for the same old people that get it before. And sadly, in the last 3 weeks, Trump has turned to that crowd, and he was doing the right thing, saying the right thing, and about 3 weeks ago, he did a 180. And now he's, at any chance he can get, especially since his meeting in the Vatican with, I call him the Green Goblin, stole it from another show, and I call him the Green Goblin. And so since he had his meeting with the Green Goblin at the Vatican, he's been seriously beaten up on him. Now you got that idiot former General Kellogg running around telling people his ridiculous demilitarized zone plan as if Russia's going to go for it. And Russia's not going to go for that. Nothing that has happened over the weekend is going to make any difference to Russia, in part because of what I just read, Putin's response to this proposed unconditional ceasefire. Now, Trump, right after Putin's unconditional ceasefire response, where he said, no, we're not going to agree to that, but we will agree to meet in, if you wish, in Istanbul on Thursday, Trump got on and said he's going to tell Zelensky to do it, to meet with him on Thursday in Istanbul. Not individually, but their teams, to get started at the same place where they left off in 2022. Now that is actually good news, if he right. sticks to that. That's good news.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, why would he, if he's in charge of this war, or if he's buying into this war, why would he tell Zelensky to meet with Putin unconditionally?
Well, yesterday he told Putin that he had to unconditionally do a 30-day ceasefire, even though Putin and his entire companies are saying, no, we're not going to do that. You're just going to use it to, like Putin said in his speech, to dig new trenches, to resupply the front, to dig all this, and we got to start all over again, kicking your asses all the way. We got to start all over. And right now, we're winning. Why in the world would we do that and allow you to regroup? And many, many military experts say the only reason Zelensky wants a ceasefire isn't to resolve the war. It's to do exactly that. Regroup, get more American weapons. He just got delivered $1 billion to him on the 10th, the day after Victory Day, from Kaya Kallas, and she's nuts. And they delivered another $1 billion to them. And now, allegedly, Trump has approved the transfer of all of Germany's in-stock Patriot missiles. And there's a lot of talk that America won't supply them themselves because we've already given Zelensky, and so has everybody else, and Russia's destroyed them all. We've already given him all of our spare Patriot systems, Patriot missiles, and we are not in a position to replenish that supply quickly. And so the Patriot systems have not been doing all that well. And $500 Russian Shahed drones sent in a swarm are requiring these multi-million-dollar Patriot systems to fire at a $500 decoy missile. And Russia's shooting off, they're producing 500 of those, 5,000 of those a day.
Right.
So even if they get these Patriot missiles, it isn't going to help the effort, because 100, those will be gone pretty damn quickly, and sanctions. Russia don't give a rip about sanctions. Oh, geez, we're going to be subject to more sanctions. Oh no, Remember Sluggo? Oh no, Sluggo, he's going to hurt me. No, you don't remember Sluggo?
I do.
From Saturday Night Live, Gumby and Sluggo.
Right, Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill. Anyway, I digress. Well, my dear brother, I appreciate you calling into the show, and I'm very happy that you've listened. And thank you. I like to think that somebody thinks I know what the hell I'm talking about, even if I got to pay him for the opinion.
Well, then I'll.
How much am I sending you? What was I going to send? I don't remember.
Well, whatever.
Just send me an invoice. We'll figure. It'll go in the stack with all the other ones.
Yeah, well, it's more money than I've ever seen. So whatever.
That's right.
Doesn't matter how much or how little.
That's right. We accept all forms of credit cards and anything.
Yep. Hey, well, listen. I'll listen to the entire broadcast. I got to hop off and I got to call the princess who's in Denver waiting for my phone call.
Well, there you go. You get right to that and have a good evening. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there he goes. Well, that makes me happy that he gave in a call and chatted with me for as long as he did. So it's the show that I was talking about, which is a very good one, is called Vantage with Palki Sharma, Sharma. Her channel, I believe this is her channel, is called First Post. And she has 7.84 million subscribers. And she does very well. And of course, right now, all of the media from India is focused upon the war and the attacks between Pakistan and India. And the attacks that went on because of the damn it, now I can't remember the name of the region. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the name of the region that they're talking about. And but either way, the Pakistanis are standing down. Trump put something on Truth Social yesterday that they were all getting rid of the war, and the war was ending, and that is a good sign. between two nuclear powers, and I hope that doesn't become another eternal hot spot. We don't want that to ever happen. I did want to read to you or supply to you a little bit more information from the Slovak PM, Robert Fico. Basically, he's praising Moscow's offer of talks with Kiev, but he isn't very optimistic, and neither am I. Many Western states want the Ukrainian conflict to continue, he says. I agree with this point of view. They do. They absolutely want it. The only offers that they give to Putin are those that he must reject. The only things they try to do is force him to do something. You're not going to force Vladimir Putin to do anything. And I challenge you to force any Russian to do anything. He's not alone. You know, I can't be forced to do certain things. You know, it's they believe what they believe, and a lot of them would prefer to fight it out at whatever the cost, in protection of their future generations. This is an existential war to them. They are fighting for their very survival, is what they have said for a very long time. Because they are under attack by the entire collective West. But they're not. Remember, 27 countries is what Putin said showed up. And those are leaders of the countries. Then they had 10 international organizations that showed up on top of that. If you haven't watched the Victory Day parades, they were pretty damn impressive. They put out so there's a new tactical weapon that they've put out, and I talk about the Shahed drones that they have, and these drones are large, okay? What's the one that the Americans have? I forget. I want to call it the Raptor or something like that. That's like a small airplane. These are, the Shahed is probably 4 feet across, maybe, by 5 foot long, and shaped like an airplane. You've seen them on thingy. Well, if you watch and I saw something new that I hadn't seen in a military parade or seen anywhere else before. I'd heard about it, and I don't remember the nomenclature. But what they have is that the Russians have figured out, especially with these massive drone strikes that they're doing, where they call it a swarm. And so they take a swarm of these drones and they ship out, like I said, to entice Ukraine into wasting their Patriot missiles. They'll fire 40 of these things toward a target. And Ukraine has to make a decision to use $1 million weapon against 40 $500 weapons. So even if you have 40 $500 weapons, only 2 of them with warheads attached of some sort, 40 times $500 is only $20,000, right? Against $1 million or more a shot for these Patriot missiles to come back. You know, Russia makes things 10 times, 50 times cheaper than we make them, and they're just as effective. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but they're brand new, the best. By all accounts, including American, their best nuclear submarine disappeared, came out from the port of Murmansk, I think, and disappeared for 2 weeks. And that submarine has the capability of firing missiles with nuclear warheads on them from anywhere under the water at any depth, and those missiles can reach anywhere in the world. Plus, it's a new drone type of missile. And if you're not afraid of this, perhaps you should be, because we don't have anything that can counter it. These drone sorts of missiles, so what, imagine this is quite the concept. You can take a Russia and the Russians have perfected this. Nobody else has it, but I guarantee you everybody else, including the U.S., is probably trying to figure out how to do it now. It's a drone missile, okay? And so what happens is this drone missile, the Russians can put it in their submarine, go park it anywhere they want to off the coast, just outside of the international water line, off the coast of the east coast of America, 200 miles out or whatever it is. I can't remember the exact international waters line. And they can park it out there and drop off a drone missile which cannot be tracked. And this drone missile can sit there allegedly for years. This missile can sit. And then it becomes a drone. In the event that somebody starts a war and that war is nuclear, somebody can activate the drone and the drone can deliver the warhead. Instead of it taking 25 minutes to get there from around the other side of the world, it takes less than 2. And they can attack whatever they want. I don't say that to scare people. I say it as a fact. The Russians' military hardware and equipment has outclassed ours in this Ukraine conflict. Every other conflict that the U.S. military has been involved in for the last 40 years has been with a substandard military, and all we had to do was roll in and shock and awe, baby. It's over, baby. Shock and awe. That is not the case in Ukraine. And our equipment and hardware has been devastated by the Russians. And you can believe that or not, Lindsey Graham. But and you can, and this hardware costs 10 times as much to make in America because of everybody getting their cut, including Lindsey Graham, all the way along the way. And I hate to pick only on Lindsey Graham. There are plenty, but he's always the loudest. He's the one that created a new set of sanctions to go against Putin, baby. And he's going to be sorry. He'll be sorry now. He ain't sorry. And he don't give a rip about your damn sanctions. He just don't care. And so I think it's unfortunate that we are where we are. And so I hope things change, but so far they have not. So anyway, we're winding up and getting to the end of the show, and I wanted to finish up this article about Mr. Fico and what he said, and I got sidetracked rambling there. But earlier, Russian President Putin offered Ukraine the opportunity to restart negotiations. We already read that. And French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Merz, however, said Putin's offer is not enough and want a ceasefire first. I am shocked that there is this is Fico. I am shocked that there is a proposal that on May 15, Russians and Ukrainians can meet in Istanbul for direct talks where concrete results can be obtained. And I hear statements from Germany and France that they do not agree. That's because they don't want the war to end. They want the war to continue. They just don't want it to be their fault that it's continuing. Fico told a press briefing on Sunday following his visit to Moscow for Victory Day, what do they have to do with it at all? Isn't it a matter for Ukraine to decide? Fico warned that the conflict will last many more years if Kiev's Western backers don't stop interfering and start respecting basic things, including the right for Ukraine and Russia to work out settlement one-on-one. The Prime Minister went on to say that Western interference was behind the failure of the previous Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Istanbul in 2022. Absolutely true. Everything was ready. Ukraine was ready to sign a peace agreement, but the big boys from the West came in and said, no, we have to use this war to beat back the Russians. Many Western countries really want this war to continue, Fico added. He expressed hope, however, that this will change once Russia and Ukraine sit down for talks. This is a matter of Ukraine and Russia above all. If they are interested in working, they would be working. Ukrainian leader Zelensky has called Putin's proposal a positive sign and said he is ready to meet. He insists, however, that a ceasefire come first, suggesting that begin May 12. Moscow is wary of a prolonged pause in the fighting without formal deal, warning it only allows Kyiv to regroup and rearm. Ukraine rejected Russia's 72-hour Victory Day ceasefire. The Russian Defense Ministry said Ukrainian forces violated that truce multiple times. Well, we are at the end here, friends and neighbors. If you ever need to get into the show, demradio.com, look them all up, listen to the podcasts. I appreciate you being here. See you again tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
When the stranger came to town, all the people watched with wonder, and the tattered clothes gathered round and raised their eyes up from the dirt. And the stranger said to them, I have been upon the mountain, I have witnessed forces like cannons that can rain